All right, we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura. Welcome to Mondays with the Mayor. Each week I share some news about city council work and anything that's happening around the city. This week I am joined with Rick Murby, our city community and economic development manager? Director. All right, thank you, Rick, and welcome.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's great to be here with you.
I think that's the first time I've said your new title out loud, so.
It's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words. I got all the words. All right, so this week City Council has a pretty full agenda for our meeting tomorrow night. We've got, I'd like to share the proclamations that we have. We have 4 proclamations tomorrow night recognizing Mental Health Month, Building Safety Month, National Police Week, and Golden Graduates Week. School of Mines graduation starts this at the end of this week, followed with Golden High School graduation at the end of next week. Also on the agenda, we have a report from our city financial director on the first quarter financial reports. Short story is things are going well and the city continues to maintain its good overall financial position. We'll get a full report on the numbers from the first quarter 2022. Tomorrow night, we also have public hearings for 3 ordinances that are up for adoption. The first is continuing on that financial theme. It's carryover budget items and additional appropriation requests. The second one is a consideration. We talked about it last time, but it's having the applicants pay for outside consultant fees for development and land use applications. So council will take that up for a final vote tomorrow night. And then the third, also a topic we've talked about multiple times, and that's new policies for Clear Creek. And that includes potentially regulating certain commercial activities, prohibiting disposable containers along the creek, and adopting new fees and penalties. So all 3 of those are up on second reading. There is a public hearing. If anyone wants to submit public comment on those items, you can do it via email or come to our meeting tomorrow night. But the main item for tomorrow night that I wanted to talk about today, and that's why Mr. Murby is here joining me, and that is the zoning code rewrite effort. So tomorrow night, it is not up for a vote. It's just on first reading, so we're not having a public hearing and we won't be voting on anything at City Council, but it's on Council's agenda for review and discussion, any questions that we might have on the topic before it comes back to us for a vote in a couple of weeks. Most of you should know about it. We've talked about it a lot. There's been a lot of information the last couple of years. It has been a multi-year effort for the zoning code that started with an audit of our existing zoning code. But I've got Rick here, so I'm going to ask him to just give a little bit of a background of the project and share what's been going on.
Sure. Happy to do so, Mayor. So the seeds of this effort really go back to 2018, 2019 timeframe when the community was seeing a number of land use development cases that were coming before them, especially in the more core areas of the community where the development that was proposed was incongruent with the neighborhood around it. And so, there was analysis done and a hearing was held, and it was confirmed that it was meeting the zoning requirements, but the zoning requirements were clearly not recreating the patterns that are in our existing neighborhoods. And so this incongruence between our community vision for itself, which is expressed in the comprehensive plan and Golden Vision 2030, was not in alignment with our zoning code. And we figured that out pretty quickly, and the community was not happy with that, and we can completely understand why. So we knew we had to do something. So we did some initial fixes in 2019, but we knew we needed to do more. So that's when we set about doing a complete rewrite of our zoning code. And that's the effort that has been underway for the past couple of years. I know a lot of people have been hearing about it. We've had a lot of comments about it, lots of meetings about it. So it's been great. There's been so much community involvement, and that's really helped shape it. And so what we wanted to do with this particular zoning code, since we knew we wanted it to be representative of our goals related to land use, we decided to hire a firm that understood that vision. So what we did was designed a process so that we actually capture what's in our current neighborhoods now. So what are those patterns currently? What are those building forms that you see, what types of architecture, what types of lot coverage, et cetera, the size of the buildings. A lot of what people were not happy with were the scale of development. And so that's what we launched into. And I think an important first step in that process that not all communities do, this is not as common, but the code audit process. So what we did is work with the consultants to do this intense analysis of the whole community to determine what's there now and how it evolved over time. And from that, we would have a better understanding of what the future should be. So that's where that effort began, and that initial step was concluded with the diagnostic report, and that's available on Guiding Golden. And it explains all the history of Golden's development over time, over the decades, from Golden's founding to today. And so that understanding really helped us figure out what the new code should be, because we want to recreate those patterns in the future. And we don't want new development in our neighborhoods to look like it doesn't belong. So this is an effort to make sure that the new development that does occur looks like it belongs there, even if it's new.
Yeah.
So that's really the overview of why we're here now, 2 years later, ready to adopt the code if council is in agreement. And so we'll be having that first reading tomorrow night, and then an opportunity for the community to provide public input at the public hearing on May 24th. So it's been a long road, but I think the results are going to show that it was worth all the effort and everyone's patience.
That's great. It's great background. I was on council, when we talked about it, when we hired the consultants and launched the rewrite effort. It's been going on for a few years now. I know City Council has had an opportunity to talk quite a bit throughout the process, both with the audit as well as with the rewrite and multiple versions of the drafts. I know Planning Commission has had lots of opportunities. You mentioned other community engagement. How else has the public and the community been involved through this process?
Yeah, really every step of the way. I mean, when we first started the process in 2020, that's when the diagnostic report the code audit and diagnostic report were underway in 2020. While that was going on, we actually had community engagement happening then too. We had a photo contest to see who could send us images of what they like about their neighborhoods, and we got a lot of response for that. And it was really great to see examples of blocks and homes and other buildings throughout the community that people felt represented Golden, and that was really helpful for staff and the consultants to think about as we're developing the zoning code later on. So that was the first real opportunity to sort of engage on that level. And we also had a council appointed committee called the Zoning Rewrite Task Force, all representatives of community, different parts of the community, and they were extremely helpful in helping us figure out what the new code should look like and what kinds of things it needed to address. So that was all citizen input as well as a number of stakeholder meetings in addition to that Zoning Rewrite Task Force. And then once the first draft of the zoning code was produced at the beginning in January 2021, we held and again this was during COVID and so in person was difficult during much of this code rewrite process, but we did a lot of online efforts. We recorded a number of presentations for people to view, and then we would hold office hours so that the public could come into these virtual meetings, these Zoom meetings, these WebEx meetings as they were, and really get in depth and ask us those in-depth questions that they couldn't really necessarily understand through the Guiding Golden updates that were given and their opportunity to comment through Guiding Golden. So this was a dialogue that could happen that wasn't available otherwise. So each step along the way, we have had that kind of conversation. The more recently was in the fall of 2021 when we talked about how to map the zoning code. So one thing that I think is important for everyone to understand is the zoning code doesn't come into effect until you apply it to certain areas of the community. So there's a map that goes along with this zoning code, and in the language of this zoning code, they're called form zones, and so they're overlays on top of our existing zoning or use zoning. And each one of them allows a different set of development types. So we wanted to make sure that we were applying these overlay form zones on the geography of the community that made the most sense. So even within neighborhoods, you'll see if you look at the map, there's lots of different form zones in some neighborhoods, just even half block level, to make sure we really calibrate this correctly so that we capture the patterns that are there the best we can. And so each form zone has its own sort of pattern language around what can be built. So I encourage all of the viewers to take a look at that on Guiding Golden. I think it's interesting. But we had several meetings to meet with the community in these impacted neighborhoods to get their input on these different form zones and how they apply and where they should apply. And so we got a lot of good comments that were then used to update that map to the current map that it is today. So that was all based on community input.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned Guiding Golden, and I have to say we've had Guiding Golden for a few years now. Can't remember exactly when we adopted it. It's been a little while, but this project in particular, I think, has had a very robust Guiding Golden presence.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of information has been made available, a lot of updates over the last couple of years, draft versions, public comments, videos. There's been a lot of information, and I think really shows how Guiding Golden can be used when there's complex topics and you can't just have one community meeting and expect everyone to understand what's going on. So I think Guiding Golden, I think it's been used really well to get all that information out there, and hopefully people have been checking it out. The last thing I wanted to ask about before we wrap up is the focus this month. And what we're talking about now is just on the residential area. So phase one adoption of all of this work that's been done. Phase one is just on residential. What's sort of the high level difference between what's proposed for residential new zoning code and what we currently have for the residential code?
Yeah, it kind of gets back to the early part of what I was speaking to is making sure that the new zoning code creates the type of development that we want to see in these neighborhoods that has historically been there. So some things you see that are different. Our current zoning code does not limit the square footage of homes, for example, and the way it's structured. And this our zoning code is many decades old, and it didn't forecast that we would want bigger and bigger homes over time. And so this, for the first time, limits the square footage of actual structures. And that's really getting at that piece that the scale of development was getting too much for these neighborhoods to handle. So that is, no longer can you grow the size of the building to the size of the lot. We have very, rudimentary tools to control growth to development now. So if you have a 5-foot setback on each side and a 15-foot setback in the front, most of the rest of that lot can actually be building. And now that doesn't exist anymore. Now we actually control the size of the structures. And also another thing that this code encourages, instead of multifamily being all in one building, there are now form types that sort of incentivize people to break up units in a multifamily, what might be normally a 5 or 6 unit building, into small little structures to break it up on the lot and make it feel like it belongs in that neighborhood rather than a monolithic building. So I think some of those changes, as well as really encouraging people to preserve existing structures. We have what's called a mostly preserved structure that can be approved, and they get more flexibility within the zoning code by preserving the older structure at the front of the lot. And then if they needed to do an addition, they can do that addition. But it's let's keep that street level character of the buildings that make up our neighborhoods. And then if you need to do an addition, you can do that in the back. And it's sort of, we build in flexibility within the code to allow that to happen in order to encourage it.
That's great. And that's very high level. I know there are a lot of changes in there.
Yeah.
And I encourage people to reach out if you have questions about the changes, if you have comments that you'd like to submit to City Council. Although we're not having a public hearing on it, we welcome your comments at any time at publiccomments@cityofgolden.net. City Council is having its first hearing and our first opportunity to talk about this final version and the proposed ordinance to adopt it. That discussion will be tomorrow night at our regular meeting. Planning Commission is having a study session this Wednesday night where they will have an opportunity to review this final version of the language and ordinance. Planning Commission will then have a second meeting the following Wednesday, and that's going to be a regular meeting with a public hearing where Planning Commission will make a recommendation to City Council for our consideration. And all of this, including Planning Commission's recommendation and the final versions in conversation, will come back to City Council for second reading with a public hearing on May 24th. So for the next few weeks, pretty much the whole month of May, we'll be talking about the zoning code ordinance and the adoption of our new zoning code. Phase 1, which is just the residential areas. Phase 2 will come later, but this month we're focused. So please do read through everything. It's posted on the City Council agenda. It's on Guiding Golden. It'll be on the Planning Commission agenda. Please read through and let us know what you think. And with that, I think we're good for this week. Thanks for joining me, Rick, and thank you all for tuning in.
Appreciate it.